live. We're back again, catching us every week as y'all do.
Yeah. Made it to
Episode 48.
Got 6 more episodes, and this will be a year of talking into the void.
Talking into the void for a year.
Yeah.
I remember I was reading about some other podcaster who kind of broke free and got a little more audience and sponsorship and presence. And like he'd just been doing it for 3 years, doing
Yeah.
it. And, you know,
Talking
it's
into the
certainly
void.
if Bitcoin's hitting more mainstream narrative and the tide hits when, hey, the price is the price is up. I heard it's cool. I want to buy high,
Yeah.
and so like attention ebbs and flows sometimes when the price is boring or there's FUD. It's kind of just like, oh, that's still around, sure. And
Well,
then when
that's
the
kind of
price,
this thing right now, right? Sorry. Go ahead.
go
Finish.
ahead,
No, I
yeah, the
was,
price hits high and people want to buy high.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that right now I don't see any FUD. Like I see the opposite of FUD everywhere.
Me
Like,
too. Yeah,
it's really strange. But I've also seen a bunch of people like pushing back on the SBR stuff, and this guy TXMC trades. He posted something about, like Saylor had some speech and said this is like a defensive wall of digital energy or something. And the guy posted, this is, what did he say? Something like weapons grade idiocy. Hey Sailor fans, this is weapons grade idiocy. And I said, what's weapons grade idiocy about what he said? Like I legitimately didn't get it. And so I wrote back and said, well, I mean, the entire premise of Bitcoin is it's a defense against double spending, right? Like, so how is this? I don't understand how it's weapons grade idiocy. And he goes, well, you're using defense differently than he is. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's the defense is defense, right? Like, if you can secure data against, manipulation, and in the first instance, the very simple protection of data is you can't double spend a coin. But if you can scale that up to say, like, you can't impersonate a message, you can't alter a message, like, how does that make this weapons grade idiocy? It seems like a logical progression of the technology to me, which is also sort of Jason Lowery's core thesis is like, you
right.
can't logically attack the Bitcoin network. You can try and brute force attack it with superior hash power. You can try and undermine the network by like co-opting hash power, but you can't directly attack the network. So I go, well, any information inscribed on the network is thus, from that definition, defended against manipulation, right? If you like the Genesis block that's got, times, Chancellor bails out, second bailout for banks or whatever, like no one can go back and change that to make it say, well, actually that bailout never happened, right? Like that's forever time embedded on the Bitcoin blockchain. So what, I mean, maybe you have some insight into this. I don't, because I just go, what makes that crazy? Like if someone says, hey, I can verify this transaction occurred from this person to this person. Irrefutable.
Were they speaking about Bitcoin or specifically the master MicroStrategy various?
No, it was a speech Saylor made that said, this is a digital energy. It's a defense against what did
So he was
Saylor?
just talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he
Yeah.
was just doing one of his little like Sailor speeches to TradFi guys, and what he said was Sailor echoes. It's a clip. Uh, so the guy TXMC said, "This is weapons grade idiocy. Sorry, Sailor fans, but what the fuck." And then Bitcoin News, Saylor echoes Jason Lowery's software thesis, stating Bitcoin is a digital defense system. Do you agree? And that's what TXMC called weapons grade idiocy. And I said, well, how though? Like what makes this
Yeah.
so stupid?
I can see where a real tradfi kind of a person who with a fiat approach views Bitcoin as another just an asset with different features. And so when
Well,
you
this
get
this guy's a pro Bitcoin guy. He's
and
not
he
a
thinks
fiat guy.
so some I've seen some Bitcoiners that when guys like Saylor or Jason Lowery and others they push the envelope on uh, futurism or the big picture paradigm on what Bitcoin represents, whether it's soft war or the thermodynamics laws of physics applied to money. And you get into these big picture stuff and people are like, whoa, that's too woo woo. It's like having faith in a god. Or they can't imagine that what they think of as like an asset has such a bigger representation of core value, like laws of physics, fixed asset cannot be screwed with. I don't know. I feel like it's fiat brain infecting Bitcoin.
Maybe. Can I? I mean, that's the thing is, I think both sides would say it's fiat brain. Can I share this real quick? It's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
1 minute. It's real quick. So this was the thing, and this is the video right here.
Digital energy. The last and most important metaphor is when we have open digital energy flowing, it is a commerce network. But when we reverse that digital energy into a shield, it becomes a defense system. Coin's a digital defense system. Coin messages, authentications, transactions, they're unstoppable, corruptible, immutable, immune to tampering by any known cyber threat. You can protect the United States commercial and military and financial systems behind a wall of digital energy. And that's exactly how we will do it. Even Elon Musk pointed out, the AIs don't know how to hack Bitcoin. They can spoof you out of your money. They can convince you that there's someone they're not. There's no.
But that was it. And then, so this is weapons grade idiocy. Sorry, Sailor fans, but what the fuck, right? And then I go, what makes this? And then he answered this, which is like a non-answer.
Scroll down a little further. I can't see it. There you go.
So you are applying the word defense to your own interpretation. Sailor used it in that clip for something entirely different. And then I said, as the clip is titled, he's certainly echoing Lowry's ideas, and that core premise of Bitcoin, as I understand it, is the Bitcoin network is generally immune to logic-based attacks, unlike software, which, as I understand it, builds upon the core premise of Bitcoin's functionality, the defense against double spends. What about applying the same principles that prevent double spending to securing other types of information as weapons-grade idiocy? I'm genuinely curious, and no response.
Well, and I think some people, they understand and they think of it in terms of the core technical aspects and how it functions, and they don't see it as a broad power shift, perhaps, or
Yeah.
as nation states or corporations or others start to adopt it and adopt it hugely and start to wield and feel that power. It's a paradigm shift that I think some people can't grok. I don't know.
Potentially. I don't know. I mean, this guy is really smart. Like he's got some really outstanding videos on like macro stuff on YouTube, and he's obviously got a huge following. I think he's what is he like? Pretty 87,000 followers. So the guy's not like a dum dum, But it's also just like I see people sort of reflexively kind of poo poo on some of these things, and I just go, well, define it more. I mean, unless maybe I'm just retarded and I just can't figure things out. But I'm happy to be wrong. Like if the guy comes along and goes, it's weapons grade idiocy because of XYZ, I go, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? But
I don't hear a reason.
But it's just like flinging an insult,
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's where without an argument, it's just sort of ad hominem. And so then with no argument, I just put it in a bucket of you don't understand enough about Bitcoin, I guess. Sorry. I mean,
well, but again, the guy is a Bitcoiner. He understands this very, very well, like much clearer than I think most Bitcoiners do. And yet he still comes out with this. So that's why I was more curious than anything. I go, I really legitimately want to hear what you have to say. I mean, what is your thesis that says securing information with the Bitcoin network is no good? Is weapons grade idiocy? I go, please explain that to me because I don't get it. But no luck.
Yeah, well, and that's where I don't think there's a solid argument there. It'd be like, you create a new nation with a totally novel, liberating constitution and a new way of running government, and you put it out there, and people are like, "Yes, this is all good. I'm all in on the Constitution and division of powers and how all this works." And then people who become patriotic take that further and say, these apply to broad human mechanisms, fundamental human rights, property rights. It could change the world. And people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're running government here. We're just running government. It's
This
like,
doesn't apply
no,
to
no,
any other
these
group.
are huge concepts that change the world. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's um, whether it's a lack of kind of creativity or willingness to imagine large, broad energy shifts. I don't know. I don't get it. I think,
I don't either. Like, it's just, well,
or
like I said, I see a lot of sort of reflexive, like someone was, and a lot of people I respect and think are, you know, smart thinkers. I mean, that like, oh, Lowry Ceases is retarded and this is that, and then the defense, it's not this, it's not that. And they just, but I never hear like a cogent argument about why. I just hear them shitting on the idea, you know?
yeah,
And this seemed like another one of those things where it's just someone like taking a crap on the idea. And I go, well, unpack it then, like explain it,
yeah,
make a case or something, please. I don't know. Like if you just, like I could just come along and just post anything, go, this is weapons grade idiocy. And people go, yeah, it's stupid because I don't like the content. I go, okay, well then,
hmm.
but that's just more. I don't know. It was a little
Yeah.
disappointing, I guess.
And maybe, people are reticent to say if they feel like when you get real big picture with this stuff, you don't want to hang your hat on what starts to feel like a faith or some sort of, you know, belief system movement. Um, Even though I think that's what it's proving out to be, they just when it's nebulous, it's just like I'm not going. It's got to be tangible. It's got to be real and tangible. So when you get into the idea of a soft war or AI cyborgs choosing the path of Bitcoin or and all this stuff, it's like whoa, whoa, whoa. That's just you're talking crazy. Just run your company. Focus on your management of Bitcoin and the collaterals of that,
Yeah,
your
potentially.
yield things, your volatile management. MicroStrategy is, I mean, I still fall into, just straight Bitcoin, just stick
Right.
to Bitcoin. I don't shit on MicroStrategy and all of its derivative stuff. I get it, but I think it's creating those inroads into the TradFi things where people are like, oh, there's language I understand. And without having to necessarily commit to Bitcoin, there's these other avenues that I can theoretically collect on yield ideas or managed volatility and it's got a stock ticker tag, so it's familiar.
Yeah,
um, those are
potentially.
all inroads.
Yeah.
They're all inroads. They all lead to Bitcoin. So
Yeah, ultimately, the thing is, for me, the sensation I get and what I see from a lot of like even the OG Bitcoiners and stuff, like I've been seeing this kind of chatter recently, like, oh, Bitcoin used to be punk, and we need to get back to its punk roots and
I've
this and that.
seen
I'm
that
like,
too.
but the thing is, I go, Bitcoin doesn't care what you think about Bitcoin. Like, it
Right.
really doesn't. I don't care if you're Satoshi Nakamoto, or if you're me, or if you're, some TardFi guy, or you're Peter Schiff. Like literally, the network is agnostic to all external thoughts about the network, right? It's
Yeah.
just a network that happens to be exceptionally secure and robust against logical attacks. So if you just start from that, like if you want to call it a first principle, there's a great first principle right there. Like Bitcoin was never punk. Bitcoin was never this. Bitcoin doesn't have a personality. Bitcoin is a hyper secure, cryptographically secured, hash power driven network. Period.
Yeah.
So how it functions, what people do with it, like that's not your place to say. Like you're not the owner of Bitcoin. You're not the narrator for Bitcoin. You're not the CEO of Bitcoin. You don't get to choose what Bitcoin does or doesn't do, what people do
Hmm.
with it or don't do with it. You can like rail against things like, people trying to co-opt the network and things like that. But like all the people that were squawking about ordinals and we should censor transactions and this and that, I go, well, you're always, every time you introduce stuff like that, you're playing with fire. And of course, ordinals just came and went because no one gave a shit. Ultimately, like it was just
Yeah. That's
people.
waning.
Well, it's gone. I mean, I've never heard anybody talking about, hey, look at all my super valuable ordinals or my rare sats or any. I mean, all that conversation just died, right? So
Yeah,
there's
I think
some hustler
Solana meme stuff
scammer
is
came
dropping.
in and hustled something off the network, or
Yeah,
at least network participants, but they didn't do anything to Bitcoin. So I don't
yeah,
know, man.
yeah. The Solana, primarily Solana, the meme crap pump.fund stuff is dropped like 97%. It's just it blew up, it dried up, and it proved itself to be what it is. Bitcoin's like the original punk, if you will, and it's like anti-unpunkable. And I like Jack Mahler's. He's got a as CEO of Strike. He maintains kind of this punk mindset about Bitcoin. We're going to keep it punk, and then he gets accused of being a sellout or a suit, which he's not. Uh, Matthew Kratter it's been a while, but he put out a really good video maybe a month or two ago about there's a typical mindset that people have about things generally where um, and I think it's partially you want to be special and you want to be cool. You want to be new, you want to be young and hip and not a sellout. There's an insecurity about needing to have that all the time. So
Right,
you seek out the bleeding edge garage bands or the undiscovered star.
right.
And maybe you have an eye for quality as well, but there's a lot of good high quality artists such as ourselves that are simply undiscovered. And so once they become I'm joking.
Oh,
But
we are properly undiscovered, sir. We are appropriately undiscovered.
yes. But yeah. And I mean anyone who sort of becomes famous largely generally they're the market either needed to cherry pick their new star or they were uncompromising promoters. But regardless, there's something there. And when any kind of unknown becomes, say, mainstream or famous, say nothing has changed about the quality of the art, and in fact, maybe it's better. And they're sticking to their values, and they may say all that, but there are people who have to be like, "Oh, I knew them before they were famous. I knew them when they were still cool." And any inkling that they're like they had some advertising or some sponsorship, it's like a signal,
So
oh, sell out, sell
yeah,
out.
yeah,
So with Bitcoin, it can't sell out. It simply runs.
right.
And then people with any sense adopt it. And some of those people that have sense, smarter than us monkeys, have been successful because they're smart. And yes, they're suits, they're companies, they've got a lot of wealth because they have intelligence and leverage,
Right.
credit, and capital.
Yeah.
So sure, they go into Bitcoin as well. And so Matthew Kratter had a video about, oh, has Bitcoin sold out because what? BlackRock got in on it, or some
Yeah.
other company got in on it, or Sailor's a sellout because he's building on it in trad ways or innovative suit ways, or oh, Bitcoin strategic reserve categorically get bad because government's categorically bad. So then, as such, Bitcoin now selling out. I'm not against any of it. I just know that's just the landscape of human capital and public opinion. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad Mr. Crowder did a video like that because that was sort of what I was alluding to earlier. Is it reminds me of like those people back in the punk days or whatever, like, oh man, I really like this punk band, and then as soon as anybody else likes them, they go, oh, I liked them before they were there. They're now they're a
yeah,
sellout because you like them, and I don't like you, so therefore that band because you like them is now no good to me. I need to go find the next big thing, you know.
yeah. Do you know
But
why?
it's like really childish sort of worldview, you know. Just like, well, I liked it before other people liked it, so therefore, you know. But
Yeah,
that like so much of their personality is tied up into that like that ability to be at the bleeding edge, as you said. That
yeah. Do you know why hipsters always burn their mouth when they eat pizza?
why?
Because they eat it before it was cool. Um,
Ah,
and you just have to. As
yeah.
soon as it's cool, hey, you want some of this pizza? Nah,
No, I
nah,
like that
it's
pizza
cool.
back when it was lava in my mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I eat it before it's cool.
yeah. Well, I mean that's precisely it. And so the thing is, a lot of these people have a certain amount of influence and sway, at least over the Bitcoin dialogue, right? And yet it's sort of odd. Like, I don't know, but just like some kid who likes a punk band, like when the adults walk in the room and start doing adult things with whatever the punk band is, like that's how you got Nirvana and that guy blowing his brains out because he was still stuck in his childish punk brain going,
Yeah, he was stuck there.
I
Yeah.
can't be successful. Like this is anti everything I stand for. And it's like, well, if you can't learn how to adapt to the adult world, then you end up in such a deep place where you're either either your wife blows your brains out and makes it look like you killed yourself, or you actually kill yourself. But either way, it's it's sort of a non thing around Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network has one major risk: mining centralization. Period. The rest of it, and there is some issue about like core developers and what core can push and what updates they come up with and things like that. Like core is another area where that there is a potential for compromise depending on who's funding it and who's coming into code and things like that, and yada yada yada. But the bigger sort of principal risk, like as Jeff Booth always says, provided the network stays decentralized and secure. But if the
Mhm.
mining hash gets centralized, then all bets are off for Bitcoin. Like it's just game over for that network. So,
And
uh,
there's the yeah, not to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, it's if we're talking about like people squawking about some sort of punk ethos or what Bitcoin was meant to be or what Bitcoin was intended for and all this kind of stuff, I go, it doesn't have an intention any more than the internet does or a hammer does, right? It is a tool that is available for use by the globe. And if you really want to make sure that it stays true to whatever vision you think, then you can advocate for that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to get utilized by someone else.
Yeah.
People like gunpowder, right? That's Safadine's thing. That's Lowry's thing. For the longest time, people use gunpowder for medicine. I don't know how accurate all that is, but they overlooked a very critical quality of gunpowder. Just like when they first started pulling petroleum out of the ground, they go, "Hey, man, this stuff's great. We can replace whale oil with this." But they never really got beyond like, "Oh, kerosene. We can use this for lamps. Cool." But it was someone else came along and said, "I think all that stuff you're throwing away, we might be able to use." Well, what is it? It's gasoline. Oh, that stuff. You don't want to use gasoline. That's stupid. Why would anyone use that stuff's dangerous? It's so flammable, and you can't. But that obviously transformed the world because a
Yeah.
bunch of people didn't get it because they were too punk, they
Yeah.
were
Too
too
punk.
to hang on to their kerosene and whale oil.
Yeah. I still I've got my I got my goth whale blubber lamp. Man, that's still cool. Um, Technology simply it empowers, and it's like Hal Finney's quote. But yeah, it's a tool that can be used for corruption, but it also is empowering a lot in every way, and I think it allows for freedom and decentralization. For example, I was just reading this morning about relatively new uh, Bitcoin mining protocol, Stratum. There's a Stratum version 2 out,
Mm,
and it really upends a lot about how pools can function and how my individual miners can join pools using Stratum version 2. Stratum version 1 came out in like 2012 and has been just kind of the mainstay for mining pools forever.
right.
Um, Stratum version 2 came out fairly recently, and it allows it well, for one thing, just the technological benefits being faster. It's like half the bandwidth, half the size of data, encrypted end to end, and punchline being that individual miners can define their own block templates without having to use a pools template. Ocean kind of started some of this. I think they have something called their datum protocol, but
Mm,
it allows individual miners to, hey, if you want to have your own template, your own block uh, uh, framework, you can do it.
mm,
Um, so this would theoretically allow individual miners, say, joining Ant Pool or Brains or other big pools, say Foundry, and you can join the pool using Stratum V2, and you don't have to get stuck with their block template.
right.
it decentralizes mining more generally.
Well, explain more. Like what
I don't
about
know a lot about
what
the
about the
techn
construction of a block template helps decentralize things? Because I don't know. Like,
well, my understanding of it, so say you have you're mining to a pool that forces you to use their block template, and that block template could um, disallow, like, oh, we don't like certain types of transactions.
oh,
We're
like
only,
censoring blocks.
yeah, so like, or they're going for the money. They just want the highest fees, the highest money, instead of allowing for a
Oh,
more
small transactions.
egalitarian
Yeah.
sense of use as a peer-to-peer, um, payment system. So
Yeah.
either they're going for the money or they're censoring certain things.
They're like OFAC compliant blocks or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, we only recognize OLFAC compliant transactions.
Right.
So their templates, you mine to those, and their template controls the nature of what blocks are being discovered. Whereas if you run your own template, like Ocean and others, it's like, you know, you could say, I don't want shitcoin on Bitcoin, or you could say, no, I want to, I want to include all the little transactions in there for, low fees. I don't care about fees. I just want good payment system.
Right.
Anyway, that's the idea behind, like, say, block template in your when you're mining,
Huh.
and that's a butchered way to describe it all. But
I'll have to look into it a little bit more. I mean, it sounds interesting. When it comes to like, it's odd to hear Bitcoiners like back in the day, especially with the ordinals and stuff. And I think there's actually a pool that was rejecting ordinals transactions, right? Was
right,
it Ocean that was,
ocean,
yeah.
ocean,
But I think that's a really poor precedent to set for, you know, block, because you can call it spam. And there was a very coherent argument to say, hey, you're spamming the network, you're degrading the network quality by spamming with this shit, and you're preventing legitimate transactions from going through. And you go, okay, well, there's an argument to be made there. But if you can censor something, it will be censored. If something becomes censorable, then all of a sudden you've got censorship on the network, and then it's not a censorship resistant network anymore. It's just a censored network. And I think that's problematic philosophically and, on a lot of levels, but it's also a proof of work. They go, well, we can censor the network anytime we want. As long as we have enough collusion, we can censor transactions. And that, I think that's a great big, blaring red beacon against, decentralized, permissionless network security.
right.
So,
So three pools control, or quote, control 70% of the total hash rate, and that's Foundry, Ant Pool, and what is it, via BTC, and then there's F2 pool. But anyway, the concern being that, like, these big pools find a majority of the blocks, and that through that, if they collaborated, which they do to some extent, they could censor or control or just be for profit or whatever, but they could sort of manage what blocks are discovered, what transactions get into blocks through the
right.
template.
Yeah.
So with Stratum V2, it'd be like, you may have a lot of hash rate, but you can no longer control individual miners unless you're buying and running the hardware yourself. If you're an open pool, it allows individual miners who want to join your pool for whatever reason, maybe chances of, for returns.
Right.
But they don't have to follow your block template.
Right.
So that's decentralizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it could be hugely decentralizing.
Well, it is, provided individual miners get back onto the network. It's one of the things that makes Solo Satoshi so great, because they're out there pushing that idea constantly. I know they're doing it for profit motivated reasons, like they want to sell their miners, but I think their core philosophy and premise is spot on. I'm a huge fan of the work they're doing, because they are out there just pushing as hard as they possibly can. Spin up a miner, man. You need to be part of mining Bitcoin. You can't just be a passive, like, number go up guy if you really truly believe in the revolution and the movement and all that kind of stuff. And I wish more Bitcoiners would take it seriously, but people are more than content to just sit on their hands and talk about how stupid Sailor is, or how stupid, somebody else is. And I mean, but those people that have influence over the conversation, at least currently, I think would do the network a great deal of service by getting less about talking about the day-to-day drama of Bitcoin shit and get more into like, supporting the network broadly. Like you
Yeah.
said, there's three pools control 70% of hash, and that's bad. That's not a good thing for Bitcoin at all. Not even one iota, because all
Mhm.
it takes is a very simple collusion by a very small handful of people to go, we are now OFAC compliant Bitcoin. And then you can say, well, the real Bitcoin is going to split off and there's going to be the real. And you go, well, yeah, to a point, but then you end up as a sort of meaningless fork of what is now considered, by the rest of the population as the real Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you get, then with the amount of infighting that's going to happen on the fork, and you can suddenly find yourself in a place where Bitcoin is just another fiat thing that's commanded by fiat people and run by fiat people and does fiat stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a huge risk.
Yeah, there's even very 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 pro Bitcoin individuals, miners, corporations that are completely corruptible or corrupted because they view it from a fiat money lens or who it happens, power corrupts. But so then you'd say, well, why would they adopt Stratum V2? Um, the benefits are it's faster. Like any little edge you can get in the speed at which you're discovering a block and transmitting that, if it's twice as fast, which Stratum V2 is twice as fast, it takes half the bandwidth and is half the size of data. There's that. It also, because it's end to end encrypted, there's the incentive for miners to use it because there can be, I mean, remote chances, very remote, that you get a man in the middle attack where they are monitoring your line into the hashing protocol and they man in the middle it. And if they saw a block discovery, they grab it and steal it.
Oh,
Stratum V2 is end to end encrypted. So there are good reasons for even established mainstream miners to use it, being faster and more secure.
right.
It's backwards compatible with Stratum V1. So if various miners are still using
Mhm.
version one will work as a protocol. Same transmissions, everything, taking more bandwidth and size, but compatible.
Right.
So it just seems like there's a lot of incentives for the move to happen, and what that does is open up the doors to decentralization. And then so people who crap on things generally, like the tweet or the post you showed, and you see it elsewhere, like people crapping on Lightning. It's like, and or on Noster, crapping on Noster. Yes, it's new, it's imperfect, and it's like, well, instead of just throwing out criticisms and say, well, it doesn't do that, it doesn't do that. How do we make that constructive? The goal is there, the vision is there. We want this freedom to work. So how do you help? You could point out problems, but some people just crap, crap, crap. And that to me gets old. It's like, okay, screw it all. It don't work.
Yeah. Problem.
Well,
Problem. Problem.
what
Yeah.
else? What else do we have? Can we try to build up, or do we just want to criticize what we see others building?
Yeah. Exactly. I'm with you, man. Like, just watching people kind of, but I mean, they get a lot of views and they get a lot of, traction from their audience. But the thing is a lot of these critics are, their motivation isn't like, I'm here to support Bitcoin. Their motivation is to like, I need to expand my follower base so I can make more fiat bucks.
Yeah,
And
drama
so,
sells.
yeah, drama sells 100%. And there's a lot of just pretty bizarre drama queens, like
Oh,
not just in Bitcoin Twitter, but just all across Twitter. And like one of the things that most troubles me about Twitter is I see like a lot of opinions just flying around that I just go, Jesus Christ, these are like they're such like bottom feeder opinions about really complex topics, whether it's the war in Ukraine or, the politics of the United States or whatever. And you just go, man, you guys just don't get it. Like there's layers and layers and layers of complexity underneath all of these things. And to just boil it down to a simple thing to get people enraged is part of an addictive profile, right? I mean, it's like these little rage things hit the same like pleasure centers that drugs do,
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in the middle of this like swirling mass of like addictive food, addictive content, addictive everything, and it's all just to get this like your eyeballs glued to a screen and to extract as much fiat from you as possible, whether it's through
Yeah.
your food purchases or through your content, you know, absorption or whatever, or just your attention in general is valuable to these people. But it's all net unhealthy. Like, and for example, like the Tesla stuff, like right now, like
Oh, yeah.
everybody, I'm seeing more and more people saying, "Oh, there's civil wars coming, this and that and the other thing." I challenge anybody to drive down the street and find a Tesla dealership that's on fire right now. I mean, just like what you see is you've got a media apparatus that is inflaming marginal people to go do something dumb, or they're actually facilitating people going out and doing something dumb, going, "Hey, here's some money, go set fire to a Tesla dealership." And then they're amplifying the shit out of that message. Both sides. They're going, "Look, these people are attacking." For the side that's doing the attacking, they're going, "Look how much they hate this guy." For the side that's responding to it, they're going, "Look how deranged these people are." But meanwhile, it's one thing. It's one instance or two instances or five instances out of a country of 330 million people. Five dealerships got set on fire or something. You go, okay,
Right.
now we're talking civil war. And I go, well, or are we? I mean, like right now, if I walk down the street, I don't see a bunch of Tesla protesters in the street. And when I see the footage of these Tesla protesters, there's like 30 people standing around going,
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk is bad. Nah. So, both sides are amplifying this message for their own engagement. But what they're really doing is just inflaming the tensions of everybody sitting there going, Elon Musk bad, or Elon Musk good, or liberals bad, or what. And it's just like,
Yeah.
you're being manipulated, like in a grotesque fashion.
Yeah. And I experience it personally the most from the boomers in my life, and that's from both sides, where it's sort of like that what's on the screen on your little flat screen is reality,
Right.
and whether that was through the COVID era or through um, on the left side or the right side, stuff's going on here and there, and your brain gets sort of so kind of addicted, but sucked into that all this stuff is going on, and yes, like we're on the brink of civil war, and there's all this anxiety and thing about that, and it's like, and so it's like, given like the job that I have, it's like, ooh, I heard this and that, how are things in your world? And it's like, same,
Yeah.
just, I mean,
Nothing's
I'm
changed.
still shoveling shit, but it's the
Right.
same stream of sewage.
Yeah.
It's the
It's the same shit.
um well, what about, this or that, the car you drive? And it's just like, no, I mean, I like, so it's like, stop and look around. Sort of like this morning. um I get up in the morning, I make my coffee, I can play with my daughter, enjoy the sunshine. Spring is coming. Yep, the sun rose. Life is good.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not consumed as people in my life are, where it's like, oh my God, the world these days, and they're on the train looking on the cliff shadow side of the train versus I'm like, have you looked around? And like, if you stop and look at your life,
Yeah.
are things not maybe better than ever for you? I mean, now
Maybe.
everybody's got their circumstances, but
Of course.
we're not living hard times.
Yeah. No.
Not that we're not in, not, I mean, we're in late stage fiat era of some things where I think it's not just short time preference. It's like immediate time preference,
Right.
where you can get loans for DoorDash now and buy now, pay later.
Yeah.
It's just like, my God, the level of decision making in people's lives is pathetic, but the opportunity is still as good as ever, I think. I don't know. Or
Yeah. I agree. I mean that's kind of the point, is like while people are sitting there enraged, like I just went and played golf the other day. It's a beautiful day outside, walking around, just whacking a little ball across the grass and kind of going like, I don't I don't see any like problems from Doge right now. Like I didn't see like I don't see, zombies running amok on the streets. I mean, like during the COVID era when they had those BLM riots and stuff like that was obviously a thing. But even then, like if you were in Portland, how many people were directly affected by the riots in Portland? You go, well, the people who worked at the federal building kind of had a rough time of it. Downtown, it was sort of smoky, and you got. But if you were like in Beaverton or something like that, you go, oh my God, the world is ending. But then they would just get out, get in their car, and go to Safeway and get some groceries. And it's like, well, how on the verge of collapse is society if you're still just going to the store and buying some groceries, you know? And I'm not supporting any of the stuff that they did during any of that time. Like I think it was all destructive, but it was all funded. It was all paid for, and it was all an active act of trying to destroy and trying to create and trying to foment conflict within the United States. And there's a great video that says like, what would happen if someone tried to invade the United States? You go, it's just not going to happen. Like the really unique, fun thing about the United States and the fact that the British, like sent a bunch of people over here and then they broke off, never to be captured again. Aside from 1812 when they came and burned the White House down, no foreign adversary. I mean, it's just impossible to get in here. Like it's just not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
330 million guns for 300 million population, military bases all over the place. We outspend everybody by a bloody like a 10x over the next military spender down, and that's to support a military all around the world. But if you brought all that home and just said, oh, we're just defending the homeland now, like good luck. And the United States of America cannot be conquered from the outside. So the only way to conquer the United States of America and the principles and values that it holds is to destroy it from the inside, which is a very clear path that people are trying and have been trying to do since the birth of the nation. Is they've been trying to gut it from the inside out, and but there's such a resilience to this system. I think all those things are ultimately destined to fail. But what do I know? Maybe I'm being Pollyanna-ish about it or something like that. But
I agree.
it's so
I
ingrained
mean,
in us.
yeah, it's like the claws have variously successful, but have been struggling to keep a grip on basically the innate blooming of humanity as we all naturally, innately struggle towards, or not even struggle, just thrive towards a golden age. And that grip is loosening, or at least the mask is getting ripped off. And there are still certain keywords you probably can't say, or you get banned by these, centralized, controlled platforms.
Yeah.
But like the release
Well,
of the
we're on
JFK
Rumble right
file.
now, brother. You can say whatever you
Well,
want. Best I can tell.
yeah, we'll see where it sticks. And I think they seem to regulate the live stuff less so than the ones they process and you upload individually. But I don't know. I haven't figured it out. We've been shut down before, but so like the release of all the JFK type stuff. At one level, you could say, oh, it's a whole bunch of nothing burger. At another level, what I've been gleaning and hearing elsewhere. So not like I'm reading them, but
Yeah.
well, yep, definitely the CIA all over this.
Yeah.
Not only that, it appears that some country in the Middle East, one of the
Other
different
foreign
ones,
intelligence may have been involved. Yeah.
yeah, now specifically named by name in their intelligence office, kind of named repeatedly is in there, and it's like of all the random Middle East countries that shall not be named. How is it that they're so involved? And then apparently, I mean, there's ideas of oh man, well, who was it? Candace Owens. I don't listen to Candace Owens a ton, but she had a particular interesting thing that, and others have. Ian Carroll's another good one,
Yeah.
but touching upon how is it that this one particular country in the Middle East may have like blackmailed the Dulles brothers in the CIA and
Yeah.
others in high levels of government.
And the
Um,
FBI and
and yeah, just it's a blackmail autocracy, and it's not just a generalized people in power blackmail each other. There's a very singular source of most of that we also pay off, and
yeah.
I
Well,
find that
there's
interesting.
a very strong reason why those Epstein files haven't been released yet,
Yeah,
because so many people. I don't know
Epstein.
because I haven't seen them, but so many people are compromised by that. I would point out that if it weren't for the prudishness of the Americans in general and the sort of prison rules they want to apply to like human sexuality, that a lot of this blackmail couldn't occur, you know. Now the thing is, if you got like these politicians going around diddling toddlers, that's pretty bad. But they're getting tripped up off of, you know, having they're being videotaped, as best I can tell, having intercourse with like 16, 17-year-old girls, which is enough to like nuke you, right? And that not that I'm saying I support that idea. I don't. That's not at all what I'm getting at here. What I am getting at, though, is that historically speaking is a pretty normal human behavior that is now an enormous lever point for manipulating entire government structures, including our own, including our Congress, including our judiciary, including like all of these people are pinned underneath an idea and this notion of prison rules that I think people really need to start evaluating differently somehow or another, because it's an enormous vulnerability, obviously, where we can have our entire United States government apparatus being held hostage by, you know, damning evidence of, you know, impropriety and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, I'm not suggesting the world should just get to a place where, you know, anything goes in terms of human sexuality. And I also think it requires a pretty serious adult conversation about how we treat this kind of stuff, because right now it's super easy for a foreign power to compromise our entire system through the use of blackmail around something that 2000 years ago, if you would have said, hey, this guy had sex with this 16-year-old girl, they would have said, and like, so what? Who cares, right? So I'm not saying we should go back to the time of 2000 years ago either. I'm not suggesting any of this stuff. I'm just suggesting it may behoove us to take a hard look at what sort of vulnerabilities we have and why, because obviously a lot of very powerful people have succumbed to that temptation and are now compromised because of it, right? I mean, that
Yeah. Well, yes, sex, you know, like they say, you know, everything in life is about sex except for sex, which is about power. And um wherever I mean, there are, for humanity to function, there are ethics, and um whether it's kind of a common law or a set of God laws, um, in a culture, in a society, variously different throughout the world, there's a sense of ethics and good and bad, right and wrong. Wherever that line is, that's
right,
where there's like a leverage point for blackmail.
right, exactly,
And
spot on, well said.
yeah, that's kind of my thought about it. And so, and boy, has that lever been levered very well in America. I mean, we have those puritanical type roots and a sense about that. But regardless, the the type and level of blackmail that's occurred, it's and the some of the stuff that's happened that we know or don't even know about. It is sick. On the soft end of that, I think of like sort of like what happened to Matt Gaetz. You know, Matt Gaetz was um, sort of like up and coming and moving, and he got
Yeah,
popped.
yeah.
So
Well, wasn't it
for
like a 16 or 17-year-old girl that he got popped
something
over?
like that, yeah, it was sort of like um, yeah, that was one for me where it was like on this line of, is this a conversation or is this like gotcha pop?
Yeah, right.
Um,
Well,
and
that's
well,
like, well, go ahead.
one 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 core theme there is the source of the blackmail and who they might be, you know, who the victims might fight against in terms of the powers that be.
Yeah,
Israel is at the source of so much of this stuff, and you think how and why. Oh my goodness, it's a rabbit hole. It's
yeah,
deep. It's
potentially.
deep and old, and there are reasons for it. And at this point, as the mask is getting ripped off, and there it is, I think people are coming to the realization of we can see it more for what it is, and maybe it can become a different conversation.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's a unique um, topic in the regard that you can't mention it, right? Like we've sat here dancing around it for the last 20 minutes because just the, you know, all it takes is for the screaming lunatics to come along and start calling you an anti-Semite. And,
Anti-Semite, yeah,
right. But it's like one of the few populations on planet Earth where you're not allowed to criticize. And it's
yeah.
really, it's disturbing that, you know, there's this push to like make it illegal to talk about things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if anything that's not open to critical evaluation, and there's reasons behind that as well, right? I mean, so like just depending on your point of view and where you're coming from. But that's what I was getting at earlier is like these are complex, deeply layered topics that you can't just unpack with a sentence, right? And people want that soundbite answer, like, oh yeah, it's these people did it, or this person's doing this, or this, or this, or this. They're looking for a very simple answer. And you go, well, if you're a people who's been historically persecuted for thousands of years, and I mean that's biblical. I mean, you can just read the Bible and read about the persecution of those people in history. And then you go, well, if you are a people that comes from those roots and you feel like you must do anything you need to survive, then you kind of go, well, it kind of makes sense why people are doing what they're doing and whatnot. And if you don't have the tools at your disposal to ensure your survival, then you need to leverage the tools that you do have, right? But it's
Yeah.
the same thing that like, the people that were fighting the British, like if we had gone up against the British head to head, rank and file formation fighting, we would have lost. Like we would have gotten our asses handed to us. So they had to go to unconventional warfare. And what you're saying is like an evolution of unconventional warfare. But, um, you know, like I said, just the fact that you can't talk about it openly without being branded something. And
Right.
when people are screaming obscenities at you, but they're doing themselves a disservice now because now they've so diminished the value of that insult, that slur, because like you can literally just say anything. It's like Nazi, I mean, like,
Hitler. Yeah.
yeah, you're Hitler. Like, but they're
Yeah.
taking like Elon Musk, like everything he does, he's Nazi Hitler. They
Don't
call
raise your hand above your waist.
yeah, whatever you do,
Keep palm up. Keep your palm up.
yeah,
Limp wrist. Limp wrist. Do not have a straight hand. Limp wrist.
yeah, whatever. I mean, but it's just a gesture and things like that. Not to mention, like, there's this cadre of people that are now going around spraying swastikas all over the place and calling other people Nazis. I'm like, that's a Nazi tactic. Like that was crystal knocked. Like you guys are participating in a crystal knocked right now, and and then claiming the moral high ground in the middle of it all. It's just really like we're living in bizarro world. And
Ian,
best I can tell, if you go through the United States history, like almost the entirety of political violence for the last 100 years has originated from the left. Like I don't see a lot of like historical anecdotes about political conservatives going around firebombing things, but there's tons and tons and tons all through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. It's always, I shouldn't say always, but there is an enormous disparity in the use of political violence between one side and the other.
it's
So,
always the communists.
yeah.
No. I
Well, it
mean,
is. I mean
I
that is
sometimes I just it's
violence.
too complicated to try to describe to people, and I'll just say people be like this or that and the other, whatever, and I'll just be like communists.
Yeah.
Just call it. I know it's. I can't just say, oh, it's just one single hook. It's communism.
Well,
It's
it's
just
Marxist.
easier to describe as communism and just say it's communist.
Yeah.
Commies. Sorry,
Well, it's
communist.
Marxist violence, but the
Yeah,
Marxist movement has always been rooted in violence, and it's
yeah,
always been rooted in disruption. It's always been an anti-human ideology.
yeah.
So,
Ian Carroll, he's been on the topic of between Epstein and a lot of other stuff for a long
yeah,
time. Man, he delivers some great, interesting stuff, but he constantly has to disclaim. And
right,
he did it again, like on Rogan again. He's like, man, I just repetitively, this is my disclaimer. I'm
right,
trying to talk about these issues without saying it's these people or that
right,
entire nation or all of that word of a belief system or that religion. I'm not saying it's all of those people. No, no, no. And yet, follow the money, follow the thread, connect the dots. It is consistently this particular power that is.
right.
But what do you call that?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's the same thing as like the neocons in America, right? Like they went to Iraq and did all these military adventures, and they go and blow stuff up, and they got us into Vietnam, and they got us into all kinds of really horrible stuff. And so you go, America bad, and you go, well, it's not really America, so to speak. It's this subset of Americans that pretend that they represent all of American value that are creating all these problems, you know. And so there's always this little subset that will ride under the banner of something, and then the plebs beneath it all just want to paint everything with a broad stroke. Like people go, America's evil colonist empire or whatever, and you go, well, there's historical accuracy to that statement, but it doesn't mean that all Americans have gone around enslaving people, or all Americans have gone around blowing up things in Iraq, or all Americans have gone around overthrowing governments in Central America. Like that's not. There's a very tiny subset, like a sliver of our population, that goes engages in that stuff under our money, right? Like they take our money and then they go do things that we wouldn't necessarily agree with if we knew what they were doing. And yet most Americans are not in a position of authority, power, understanding, or knowledge to oppose that behavior, right? So that's where it comes from. So there is merit to the idea. Go, America is an evil empire. Yeah, well, you can make that statement, and that doesn't mean Americans are evil, right? Like that doesn't mean like
Yeah.
you and me and the citizens of the world are doing bad things every day and going around killing people in the streets. And despite that being our perception globally, like I used to talk to people in the United Kingdom. They go, "Oh my God, like have you ever been shot at? And have you ever this and that and the other thing?" Is like, what do you think is going on over here? Never mind, like the United Kingdom, there was a great study that came out said that's actually far more violent for interpersonal violence in the United
Knife
Kingdom than the
attacks.
United States. Yeah,
Yeah.
knife attacks and just
Knife
assault in
attacks.
general, and the number of assaults on police and all this. I mean, it's a super super violent country, like way more violent than we are. But if you walk around the streets of London, you wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, this is the most violent place I've ever been to in my life." You just kind of go, "Oh,
It's so
oh look,
cringe.
Big
It,
Ben." Yeah.
I find it's so stereotypically cringe to me now whenever I see a man on the street video of some assaultive thing behavior going on the street of London or somewhere, and you just see these British cops dancing around with a stick. Please stop! I can't do anything. I'll try to grab you. Oh, I can't grab you. And it's just like, oh God, cringe. Um,
Well,
yeah,
it's the weirdest thing. Like I went on ride-alongs with the Metropolitan Police, the London Metropolitan Police, and I was talking to them, and like I remember they were responding to like a code call, right? Like there's a guy with a weapon or something like that, and so like okay, and so they're rolling code, the equivalent of American rolling code, and they're doing 70 miles an hour through the streets of London, which is pretty thrilling. I'm here to tell you, it's like woo! But you're sitting in like a BMW station wagon, just kind of going, I hope this guy's good at driving, man, because this is fucking crazy. We're going backwards down these little tiny roads, and and I said, well, but I remember we got blocked by a bus in like a little roundabout, and I said, well, can't you just get on the horn and tell the guy to move? And go, and they turned around and looked at me like I was a lunatic. Like, we don't have that kind of shit. What are you talking about? I would love to have like a little microphone I could just blare at somebody, get out of the way, dickhead. But we don't
that
have
would
that.
be uncouth.
Yeah. Well, they just don't have it. It's not installed technology. Like
Mm.
if you look at a modern American police cruiser and like all the tech that they have embedded in those things, and then compare it to like the British police forces, you go like, oh my God, how do you guys do your job? Like I don't understand how you can do anything. But never mind.
Mm.
The one of the female police officers I was talking to said, "Yeah, I was standing in a backyard. I was supposed to be guarding the rear entrance of this house because they were, trying to arrest these people inside." And she said she could hear the people inside saying, "Oh, there's only one of them out back. We should just go knife her up and get out of here." And I said, "Oh God, that must have been terrifying." She said, "Yeah, that was really scary because there was like three of these guys, and I was by myself in this backyard, making sure they couldn't run out." So wouldn't you have felt better with a gun? No, absolutely not. What? Like, what are you talking about, man? It's a force multiplier. Like, you had multiples of force potentially coming at you with knives trying to kill you, and you are choosing to say, oh, I prefer to stick to my British roots and not use a weapon. It's like, well, that's why you guys get assaulted at a rate 20 times higher than every other police force that carries a gun. Like
Chin
the,
up, stiff
the
upper lip.
yeah, your stiff upper lip and your whistle and your stick aren't going to protect you against the. Obviously, you
I
guys.
said stop. Good
Yeah,
sir. I
whee,
said, I'll
yeah,
say it again.
yeah.
Have you no manners?
I mean
No,
that's the
we
thing.
don't.
Is
We're
like,
animals. Sorry.
yeah, there are animals, but if you're contemplating assaulting an American police officer, you have to understand at the end of that day, there's a distinct possibility that guy's going to blow you away, right? Like, But it's the same thing. If you go assault a Dutch police officer, there's a pretty strong chance that guy's going to shoot you if you take it too far. If you assault a French police officer, a German police officer, literally every other police officer on planet Earth except for the British, you're probably going to get shot. With the British, you got a fair chance, dude. You got a pretty good opportunity there. If you decide, I don't want to be arrested today, I'm just going to take a swing at this guy and see what happens. You might just get away with it. I've seen British cops get overpowered, but I've also heard British police talk about it. Like, yeah, I had to hold my friend's guts in because he got stabbed trying to stop an assault. This guy got knifed up. This guy got cut. This guy got hit with a bat. This guy got, it's constant. I don't hear American police officers routinely talking about all the crazy, insane times they got assaulted, and when they do talk about it, in the rare instances, it's because someone pulled a gun on them, so it's just, it's crazy that to watch that sort of discourse unfold, man. I don't know.
So I mean, I don't like the violence that I see, whether it was years ago through the George Floyd riots or the Black Lives Matter or the Antifa stuff, currently with whatever the Tesla thing is about, and the derangement happening, all the violence, the fires, the attacks, whatever. Categorically, don't like it. Obviously,
Sure.
the results of that I've seen have been a general response to say everyone that just kind of looks at that, left or right, it's recruiting conservatism. Who's driving the Teslas? Probably generally past liberal, greeny types that
Yeah.
were into EV stuff. So you're kind of attacking each other.
Yeah.
Every time, so the more people that become victims of crime, I think in a way, the less liberal they become. Whether that's a reality check or whatever else, the result of all the dumpster fires that occurred contributed, I think, to people saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
So at a meta level, when I look at all the bullshit going on, I feel like it only undermines if you call it the Democratic Party's chance at having a future at this point. It undermines all that. So it's
Right.
like the Democrats are cornered into a position to say, are you for or against this? Because it kind of sounds like you're criminal apologetic, or we don't condone terrorism, but if it undermines Trump and Hitler, we're not against it.
Right.
So what do you stand for exactly? It shifts everyone to the right. Maybe I don't know what the op is there, but the deranged communists, I don't think that way. It's just trying to break it all down. And as a nation, and maybe more and more, like the motto on the side of police and deputy cars, instead of saying like to protect and to serve, or to hope and to hug, it might change to fuck around, find out.
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
that becomes people's mindset. The more, even you look around, you go golfing, you go in the backyard, you play with your daughter, and you're like, life is just fine. But when you look at the media and you're like, it starts to reinforce this, what the fuck's going on?
Right.
And you know what? I'm not against find out when you fuck around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, there's always been a tension, right? And like, if you get into the world of policing and what policing's all about, what it should be doing, like, I think they've made a terrible, terrible error by orienting policing towards investigatory roles, right? Like, the idea of maintaining the general peace, I think, is the proper function of a police force, right? Like, they're not there to come along and be sure that their DA can have something to prosecute. Like, that is a secondary objective to a police force. The primary objective from my position is it should be there to maintain order, right? Like, just to make sure that people aren't getting rolled, people aren't getting mugged, people aren't getting their property broken, things like that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so people don't like that because they want to see people get their just desserts and people get, punished and things like that. But ultimately, like, back in the day when the police forces were first around, like, they wouldn't hire women. They probably wouldn't hire you or me to be a cop because we're not big enough. They wanted
Yeah.
these big bruisers that could come in and just like knock some heads around and get people to calm the fuck down and go away. And if people got out of control, they'd just come and knock you around a little bit and go, enough's enough. You don't get to be this way anymore. Get the fuck out of here. And so now they've adopted this investigatory role. And now, like, every time you have an interaction with a cop, you're not interacting with a police officer, you're interacting with an agent of the district attorney. And that's, I don't think, an appropriate role for the police, but that's why you have so much hostility against the police. So, the people like the Ferguson people and stuff like that was all manufactured, like 100%. And those people had a legitimate gripe because, the people of Ferguson were getting just absolutely manhandled by the cops constantly. So, like I said, it's always complex terrain. But to your point, there's an old saying that says a conservative is just a liberal that's been mugged, And
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that, just like you pointed out. Like, I think that is the sort of through line to all of this is people are kind of going like, hey man, like I like my Tesla. I don't
Yeah.
think this guy's doing
Have you
anything.
driven one? Because I mean, they're nice.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Um,
Pretty fun to drive. So
yeah,
yeah,
and I've seen people with very liberal sentiments, and call it naive. Like it's easy to be liberal when times are good, and you just and you say you just want more free stuff, and then I've seen people make a weird hard shift where suddenly they became a sudden victim of something they didn't expect and couldn't handle, and my God, they want justice.
right,
And you'd be like, okay, apply your thoughts about this one particular situation and individual to how you would handle a system of
right,
shit that goes on.
right.
You sure got fascist quick, didn't you?
Yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah,
I want them, they need to be locked up forever.
right,
Facebook warriors and like lock them up forever. And you're like, why? Because this one impacted you.
right. That's exactly it. Yeah, and that's where a lot of that leftist ideology comes from because like people like my family in Seattle, they go, I look at them and go, you are not affected by any of the outcomes that flow naturally and predictably from your ideology, right? They go, oh, we should just have unlimited migration. I go, okay, great. Wait until they move 600 Haitians into your little isolated bubble wrapped community, and then they
On the
start
Long
beating the shit out
Island.
of your kids,
Yeah.
right? And when your kids are getting the shit beat out of them, all of a sudden, these people become real conservative real fast. And I've seen people that live like in downtown Portland and stuff that just hang on to this. Like they are just so dogmatically, associated with their ideology that they just, they make excuses for like their property constantly getting raided and being afraid in the parking lot and being assaulted and being all this kind of stuff and walking over needles and having to drag their kids past, people taking a shit on the street and stuff like that.
There's no
But I
park you
think,
can play in anymore.
yeah, well, but I think most people, when they see that, they start getting pissed, right? They start like, hey, my entire neighborhood just turned into a garbage dump that's overrun with RVs and shit like that. So even the staunchest of liberals, except for the real diehard, like super blue haired, nose ring people, I think most people that would have ordinarily been favorable to that ideology, as soon as it hits them in the face, they go, oh, this is what that looks like. Oh, I don't like that. But that's,
Yeah.
like the whole transgender thing. Like I had to deal with that in person in prison, and it's one thing for some guy to walk around screaming, "You should call me ma'am" when I go to the buy a coffee or whatever, and then having a conniption fit. Which, by the way, if you're a white dude in a dress demanding that people call you a woman, if you're talking about white privilege, that's about the most privileged possible position you could be in the world.
Yeah.
So
Trans women, it's a form of misogyny. I mean,
yeah,
you don't see nearly as much biological women demanding things about their manhood. It's always it's typically white men demanding things about femalehood. And it's like, that's like anti-feminist. And that's like misogynistic. I mean,
yeah,
you're co-opting and dictating what is a woman like.
right. Oh
I
yeah.
don't know. Why aren't women more against that? Instead, it's kind of this weird opposite.
Because
But
they're so ideologically primed to accept that sort of notion. And
yeah,
so, but even, like I said, if you get to the place where the rubber meets the road, like prison, and all of a sudden you go, well, where are all the feminists now? Like, so you're defending rapists being housed with other victims of rape because they want to wear a dress. Like you go, that ideology breaks down at where it meets reality. Like the reality of housing. And like I remember all the gyrations they go through to try and house people, and they go, well, if someone identifies as something, we need to accept that. Okay, great. This guy identifies as that. Well, we need to make sure that he really identifies that way and he's not just trying to game us. Well, then that just undermined your entire argument because you said somebody's identity overrides all reality. But now every single male inmate goes, oh, wait, it would be way better to be in a female prison. This would be fun. I can get laid and I can, abuse
Yeah,
women.
how did a female in the all female block get pregnant while in custody for a long
Yeah.
time?
Or how did they get raped? Or how did they get,
Raped, yeah.
So
It's crazy.
like I said, for most people that are really supportive of this, my experience has been they tend to be Lexus liberals or revolutionaries at the bottom end, right? Like people that are seeking power at the bottom or people that are oblivious to the the consequences of their ideology at the top, right? At the top end of the earning circle. But the second that reality hits them in the face, like I said, for every Lexus liberal out there, I go, oh, you like unlimited immigration? Great. Instead of shipping your immigrants off to poor white communities that you don't like, why don't you accept them into your community and let them overrun your schools and overrun your, nice areas and let them live in tents on the street and let them steal your pets and let them do any number, like all that stuff goes away. They are completely insulated from that under the threat of violence from the state, right? Like they will
Yeah,
go petition their police officers to go and make sure that doesn't, not in my backyard. I mean,
yeah,
that's for the poors. The poors
yeah,
can take this. We just want to be able to virtue signal that we're for it.
yeah. It's straight up, if you call it privilege or elitism or just naivety. It's a weird psychology to decipher to me, but I've decided I don't like it. um,
Perfect.
but yeah, as time goes on, I feel like it's a, whether it's just on the, you could say, on the losing side of um, history, the wrong side of history. As things move forward, I think more and more people are just, variously aware of what makes sense, and no one likes the terrorism. So,
Yeah.
and then yeah.
Well, you can
Anyway,
hope. I mean, there's always going to be that subset that is attracted to it. So I don't know, man. We'll see where it goes. But for the most part, get out and play around a golf. Life's not so bad.
yeah. Time preference wise, we keep talking about Vegas coming up, but it's aiming to go. I always keep my little dually do handy. I like to show this off.
Nice. Yeah.
Excited.
Did you make anything with it yet?
Yeah, I made my one set of seed phrase together, and it's like it took me like, because I was being careful with it. I don't know, 15 minutes, I guess.
Oh,
But
nice.
not bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quick, easy. I like clicking it. I click myself to sleep. Anyway, I love
That's
it.
awesome, man. Well, I'm actually looking forward to Vegas. I still haven't gotten any hotel information, so I'll get that sorted out this week and see if I can get that locked down so we can get that put away. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, man, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think we got a pretty good time here, and I kind of got to take a leak. So,
Yep, we're good.
all
Caught
right,
up.
man.
Solved all the problems for the week. So
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why Trump isn't calling us, dude. We can fix this.
yeah, we could be the consultants on stuff. And I just don't have enough time. But boy,
Yeah,
I sure
we'll
know a
get there.
lot.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Have a
Cool.
good day,
Until
sir.
next time.
Till next time.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.